G'day and welcome back to part 3 of my KK Radiogram restoration. In part 2 I tackled the unusual turntable and eventually got it working after I understood how it all worked. I managed to get hold of a new cartridge and gave it a test run. With everything cleaned up and working, I coated the platter with some new felt and adjusted the pickup weight. This week I'm going to have a go at refinishing the cabinet. Today I thought I'd have a go at this case. Structurally it's pretty good. The finish on it is a mess. It's got overspray, but it's got scratches in it and it's crazed. You can see the cracking in there, or the crazing in the lacquer. I've been thinking about maybe trying to reactivate it using lacquer thinners and just see if it'll melt it and heal it back. That's pretty bad crazing. I don't think it'll work. But in a minute I might give it a go, see what happens. The top and sides are all timber veneer. The base is solid timber and it's been painted brown, I think. I have trouble getting any brown paint to put on here, so I'm wondering about actually just spraying on some lacquer and stain brown on it and just coating it until we get a similar finish. So I might toy with that idea later on. The inside of the door's got this nice sticker on it. I don't want to lose the sticker. I'm thinking maybe keep this original, maybe not touch it, perhaps shine it up a bit or something, but generally leave it as it is. It looks like it's had some felt around there at some stage to soften the blow as you shut the door. I can reinstate that. I'm not sure what it would have been. Brown felt perhaps. The inside just needs cleaning up. There's not much damage to it. There's a bit of wood missing on here. I'm not sure I'm going to worry about it. It has some sort of shelf goes in here. I don't know if I'll worry about replacing that or not. I think what I'll do is go and wash this out with some disinfectant again. It was disinfected a couple of weeks ago, but I might just clean it out and use some disinfectant at the same time. I think before I disinfect it, I'm going to try and take this door off. Yeah, I forgot it had a spring on it. Okay, I'll give it a bath and I'll come back. I took this outside and scraped it all off. It was just covered in little animal feces. Then I wiped it all out with Dettol. I sanded it back and it looks pretty good. One thing I noticed though was the damage to this rail was worse than I thought. It's actually broken away. It's glued on to the bottom and the sides and it's got nails in it. I can't get it off. I'm just going to glue that back on. I'm going to leave that missing bit out, I think. There is a back that goes on here, so you won't be able to see that anyway. As I was saying before, I'm wondering about trying to rejuvenate this lacquer using lacquer thinners. So I might try that before I strip it off. I'll just see how it would work if I had to do it in the future. So I'm going to sand this off, all the rubbish that's on there, and I'll just put a bit of thinner on and see what it does. I've sanded that back a bit, and I'll just see what happens. You could kind of feel it melting the original finish when you had a fair bit of lacquer on the rag, but it really hasn't fixed it. It may not be the right finish for the thinner I'm using either. It's the next morning and I came out and I was going to start paint stripping this thing back to timber and refinishing. Now, I don't want to go on too much about it, but I thought before I do anything I'll just try a bit of acetone and try and remove that top layer of the clear finish on the radio. And I did, and here's the finished bit that I've done. Here's the old bit here, and here's the cracking here that you can see in the original finish. And if you come over here, you can't see it at all. It's gone. All I did was wipe that off with the rag soaked in acetone. I did try a bit of 4/0 steel wool, and I don't think I needed to do that. It made more mess than using the rag. So after I did that, I went back and just went over with the rag again. I've sprayed some automotive acrylic on there just for effect, see if it comes back when I put the acrylic on. And I can tell you now, there is absolutely no sign of that cracking. Now you might be able to see, there's where I've wiped up to, and there's the original finish. Now I'm just looking up here, I can see some of the cracks still going in there, so you might have to keep working it a bit harder. But I think what's happening is that you're just taking the top layer of the finish off here down to a very thin layer of it and removing the cracks with it. I think that's what it's doing. It'd be interesting to actually sand this back and just try and recoat it. Maybe it would take those little cracks out again, I don't know. Anyway, I think the theory's sound, and if someone wants to play around with it, they can. This radio's beyond that because it's got deep scratches all over it which have got to be filled. But interesting little idea. It might be useful for somebody. Now back to what I was trying to do yesterday, and I'm sorry I got sidetracked there, but an interesting little experiment with the finishes. But I will paint strip this now. There's a couple of things I need to do first. One is try and get this badge off. Now here's the little Astor badge that's on the front here. It's plastic, but it's gone yellow, and I've ordered another one. Someone's doing reproduction, so I haven't got it yet, but I'll see if that's going to be any good. I'll just try and get it off in one piece, but I'm not terribly confident. Well, that end's, oh, it's loose anyway. Oi! Okay, well, it's broken. Anyway, oh, it's got little bits into the timber there. I'll get those out. I have to get a new one anyway. If I can't, I'll just use that one again. Might be able to polish it or something. Well, there it is there. As I said, I've ordered another one, and it should get here in a few days, so I'll just replace that, but I'll hang on to that in case I have to reuse it. This is the top of the little flap door. It's got a staple in there to use as a grip to open it, so I'm not sure how to get it out. I might try and lever it out, I think. Yeah, there it goes. Okay, good. It's a nice bronzy colour too. Looks good. Okay. Alright, I've stripped that as much as I can. I've actually run out of paint stripper, so I need to go and get some more. Areas down here haven't come off. I don't think I can sand that off. I'll have to get some more stripper and put it on there. There's still bits of the top coat here that sort of won't come out. There's some there. I've just got to sand it off. It's kind of eaten its way into the veneer to a certain degree. It's very, very hard. It takes a lot of sanding to get it off. Just going to keep sanding this back until I get back to the veneer again, the wood veneer. I'm not sure what the finish was that they used. I think it might be nitrocellulose. And I remember as a very small boy, maybe 4 or 5 or something like that, and my mum used to drag me out of bed on a Sunday morning at 6 o'clock to go to 7 o'clock mass. And she'd put this woolen jumper on me that my auntie had knitted. It was a lemon-coloured jumper, and I couldn't stand it because it was up against my skin, and I don't like wool against my skin. Mum would say, it's a natural fibre, you'll get used to it after a few minutes. I said, natural fibre? I said, rubbish, I've never said a lemon-coloured sheep. I got right off the track there. The point was, when we went to church, the pews had a handrail along the front there that you would kneel and put your hands on or something, and they were rounded on the edge, so with a little groove. And I used to suck on that, and the taste of that is exactly the same as what this is. So I don't know if that gets me any closer to what it is, but every time I smell it, it takes me back to me in my little itchy jumper sucking on the pure handrail when I was about 5. So it's just something that sticks with you, I guess. All right, I've bored you enough with that, so I'm just going to keep sanding away at this stuff. It's like a rock. I'm using, I ended up using 80 grit to try and get the top off. And now I'm back to, what have we got, 240. So I just keep going. I've got to do the front here as well. Yeah, this is going to take a while. I've got to go to the hardware tomorrow and I'll get some more paint strip and finish it off. Now it's been a few days since the last bit that I showed you on the video, and I've spent it trying to clean all this off. The brown here wasn't coming off, very hard to get off, so I spent a lot of time on that. I also had other commitments, so I haven't been working on this full time. So I've just sneaked out here at night to have a go at this. It's very, very late. I don't normally come out during the night to work on it, but I better do something now. Now, to get things done as fast as I can, I've got 2 sanding blocks here, and I'll do the sides. I'll come back and do the top in a second. What was that? Alright, after that little episode, I've come back in the daytime and finished sanding it. I've run 600 all over this. I've cleaned up everything around here, filled all the gaps along here. I've got some brown paint to paint all this bottom part. And I've also got to do in here, all around here, the edges here, inside the cutout here, and around the outside of the cutout. That's just plywood, so it's got the end grain on it. So I've got to paint all that as brown as well. Now, I did say in one of the videos, because of issues I've had with brown paint in the past, it wrinkles when you put the top coat on it. I would probably try and stain it with a dark stain like a walnut added to the top coat, and then just completely coat it so you can't see through it. What I've done is I've got some automotive acrylic lacquer, so that should take the top clear coat no problem, and I've mixed it to match what the original brown was. So this will do quite a number of radios. I've got quite a few radios that need the brown trim on them. So now I was going to paint this first, then put some grain filler on the front and the top here in the wood grain area, but second thoughts, I might put the grain filler on first, I think. Otherwise I'll get it all over the brown. I've used this grain filler before a number of times, so I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but I just wipe it on. This time I'm going to try and scrape it off, because a lot of times I get little lumps left there, so I'll rub it on and then scrape it off. And this stuff's pretty good. It dries in about half an hour to an hour, probably leave it for an hour. So it goes on pretty easily and cleans off. You can, as I say, do it in about half an hour, so it's quite good to use. Now I've just spun this around. I'll start from the other side and then I'll meet in the middle. I was watching a chap the other day on YouTube, and his name is Phil. His channel is called Steel City. It's got some numbers after, I can't remember what they are at the moment. But he used egg whites to fill the grain, and I thought, I remember that. My dad used to do that years and years ago, back in the 60s. He died in the late 60s. So sort of in the 50s as a kid, I could remember him using egg whites to do this. So thought all that back. I'm not going to use it. His come up really well, Phil's. I might leave a link in the description if I think of it. He knows what he's doing as well. So not necessarily on the cabinets, certainly on the radios he does. Alright, I'll leave that for about an hour or so. I don't know how successful it was scraping off the grain filler, but sometimes you just get a lump sitting there and it's very hard to get off. This stuff dries very hard. Alright, that's 600. I've let this dry for an hour or so, and then I've run it over with 240, 320, and then I've finished it off with some 600. So it's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. So now I'm going to mask all this up, and I'll put some undercoat on here, and we can top coat it with some brown. I'll just start masking it up. I think I'm done now. That's the little door or flap on the bottom that just needs the edges painted brown. And I've masked up all the area that needs to be stained. I've put a little bit of paper inside as well, just to stop the overspray of the primer in there. I don't mind if the brown goes in there. I'll let that go in there later on. So I think I'm ready to paint it. I need to just wipe it off, get all the fluff off it, and then I'll give it a spray with some undercoat. Okay, I'm ready to spray, and I'm just using, it's an automotive primer filler, so it gives a nice thick build. I've found this sticks really well to wood, plastic, and cars, of course. So this is really good for this. This is a very cheap brand, and I find this actually better than the more expensive stuff. Now I've got this on my carousel, so I can just turn it around and don't have to move, and I'll give it a spray. So that's one thin coat I've put on there, and I'll just let it dry off and give it a few more coats if it needs it. There will be some areas where cracks will appear, and I'll just fill those and just respray them and get it all finished. But it looks alright so far. It's been drying overnight, and I've sanded it back with some 600, and it's a very smooth finish. It has a couple of little defects in it I'm going to attend to. As I said yesterday, little cracks show up that you didn't know were there, so I'll refill that and fix it up. There's another spot further over. There's another tiny defect there. While I'm doing it, I might as well just put some putty in there and just give another little local spray, and I think we'll be ready for top coat after that. I've repaired those defects and it's all looking pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is take off all the masking. I'll sand back into where it needs to fare in. Otherwise I end up with a grey line between the top coat and where the masking tape was. By that I mean I'm going to sand in here lightly. I then replace the tape here and just leave the smallest gap so that the new brown paint that's going on top covers all the edge of the undercoat that's on here. So I've just sanded it now. It's removed all the little dags and rough edges there, and I will now retape it, and I will just have just the smallest amount of the timber showing, and the brown paint will fill that grey up. So I've smoothed everything out, I've retaped it so that it's masked off properly, and now I'm going to use some brown paint, and I've got to use the spray gun. So I'll just do it. I'll leave the camera here, we'll see how we go. I might take it out if it starts getting too misty. So I'll just start doing this bottom part with the brown. Okay, the video of me spraying it may not have come out. I had the leg of the tripod against the compressor and the camera was vibrating, so I'll probably cut that out. Anyway, I've given it a coat of paint. It'll let it set for 5 or 10 minutes and then respray it, and just probably give it 2 or 3 coats and that'll be it. But looks alright so far. The colour's good. I like the colour. This has been drying for about an hour, and I'm just cutting around where the paint joint is. I'm very happy with that. I can just see a little bit of the primer under there, so I've got to sand that back. Hopefully I can sand that away, otherwise I'll just touch it up. But otherwise it's come up really well. Very happy with that. As I say, I'll need to sand in the corners there just to remove the roughness that's there, but I've got to let this harden for about 4 or 5 hours. I'll probably leave it till tomorrow actually. This is the door, the flap that covers the record player, and yesterday I sprayed it all brown around the edges and left this ready to stain. And I'd left this in the original brown because it had a sticker here that said don't slam the door, some warning instructions. Unfortunately, when I tried to just restore this paint finish in here a little bit, the sticker got ruined, the paint got ruined, so I've stripped it off and put some undercoat on it, and I'm going to paint it brown now. But I've also reproduced a sticker for here. So I went down to the office supplies and they had silver paper. This was a silver sticker with black on it. And I was able to reproduce it on my computer, and I've printed it out, and it's come out pretty good out of the printer. I'm quite happy with the way it looks. So it's just a matter now of just cutting it out and around all the edges there. The corners were rounded, so I'm just going to use some scissors to cut out around there, and they're not very good of course. So I've got some 600 grit sandpaper here, and I'll just try and sand it. And I wouldn't have thought you could do this, but yeah, they're coming out quite nice. There it is, all finished, and I think that'll look good when it's back on the door. Looks like the original. There's the door, and I've painted it brown, so I'm just going to let that dry. So back to the dog kennel. What I will do is stain this. I'm going to put some walnut stain on it. I'm just going to put some low adhesion tape around here, then I'll come back and we'll put some stain on. I've just taped around the edges there. I probably don't really need to. This is low adhesion tape, and Mia Zephyr will lift it off. It's very low adhesion, so it almost doesn't stick. I've got some walnut stain here, so I'll use that. And I sort of thought I probably could have done the whole thing in a lighter stain, but having got the brown on there now, I can't go back. Well, I'm not going to. I'm not going to strip it off again. Anyway, this will be fine. I'll let that dry for about half an hour or so, and I'm going to run some steel wool over it. That'll smooth it off. I'll run some steel wool over the brown paint as well, just to take off any overspray or any sort of roughness that's on it. and then I'm going to clear lacquer the whole thing. Well, there it is. It's looking pretty good. I've got some steel wool here. It's grade 0000. I'm just going to run over with this. It's pretty smooth. It really doesn't need this, but I'll do it anyway. Yes, that's really smooth. I'll just carry on doing that, and when it's finished I'll come back and we're ready for the clear coat on the top. This has already put the top coat on, but I've got a bit of a problem. This is what I've been using to clear coat everything, and it's a 60% sheen, and what I've got left has gone off a little bit in the can, so I'm not going to use it. I went to get some more, and the Rust-Oleum company had come out and bought this company up. This is an Aussie company, and sacked everyone and shut it down. So I can't get any more. I could use a polyurethane or something similar to that, but the gloss is too glossy. The low sheen is too low. It's around about 40%, and it just looks dull. So I've got something else I can use. One thing you're using is this acrylic lacquer. It's an automotive finish. It's clear. It's a high gloss, but you can polish it back to bring it back a bit with a lower looking sheen on it. So I'm going to give that a go. If it doesn't look any good, I can go over with something else eventually. Okay, I've run a tack cloth all over the cabinet, got all the dust off it, and I'm ready to go. The gun's loaded. I need to let that dry for a while. It's going to have another 3 or 4 coats at least, and then I'll come back and we'll have a look at the finished product. It's got about 5 coats on there now. It's dried, but I've got to let it harden off for a couple of days. Then I can use some wet and dry paper and just bring it back, and then I'll use some buffing compound to give it a nice deep luster, I hope. But it doesn't look too bad. It's not super glossy, so it's not too bad at all. Now, I did use this type of finish before I switched to that other lacquer that I had, and it always come up pretty good, so I'm quite happy with that. Now, another thing is you can buy this same paint in a spray can, so if you need to do some touching up or something, you just got to whip the can out and touch it up. I don't have to dirty the spray gun and thin paints and all sorts of things, so that's a good idea. If this works well, I'll stick to this. But yeah, I reckon it looks pretty good. Whoa. Now, I've stained the door as well. It's got a bit of an issue there with some little pitting. I'll have to sand it back and finish that off again, I think. But I've stained it, and that'll look all right sitting in there. So that'll look nice. So while I'm sitting around curing, I shall do some other work. There's some shelves to put in there, base, and that hasn't got a back. I've got to make a back for it. So I'll get on to those now. Here is the original back from the radio, and it's made of masonite. It wasn't on the radio when I got it, but he threw it in the boot or the trunk as I tried to shut the lid. So I've got that, which is good. And I've got a new piece of masonite here. So it's the same thickness. So what I can do is I'll cut it out in a square and then shape it on the outside. I'm going to cut out the center of these vents, and then I'll put this on top of the new piece of masonite, and I'll use the router to just finish them off. Now this one here, I'm just going to have to move it over and cut that one, and then I can probably flip it to cut that one, then I'll have to move it over again and cut the last one. So a bit of mucking around, but that's okay. There's a little hole there, that's for the earth, it's got an E there. There's a little hole there, and it would have had an A there, I'm assuming, for aerial. So I'll re-drill those. I'm not sure if I'll put a letter on there. Looks a bit hard. So the first thing I'm going to do is just cut a square out to the right size, and I'll start shaping it. the old one, and there's the new one. So that's come up pretty well. Still needs a little bit of cleaning up, but pretty good. I've drilled all the holes. I put a slot in here. That the old one used to have a hole in there, but I can't get the lead off to pass it through, so I put a slot in. I don't have to worry about disconnecting the lead now. I've drilled holes for the antenna and earth. The little holes there where the screws go in to hold it on. I'll open them out when the time comes. So now the next bit, and the next bit is a shelf that goes in here and the base. The next thing I'm going to do is this shelf. That goes under the radio and it goes on top of the record player. It covers the record player, and the reason for this is to let the mice and animals sit on it while they eat the radio. So I've got to put that back. Now somebody in the comments said, is this asbestos? And I said, no, it's not, it's masonite. Well, of course it's not masonite at all. It's some sort of cardboard, so yeah, certainly not asbestos. So to replace it, I've got a piece of MDF, and I'll put that way. That being the shelf, there's another piece, and that's the base, and it goes on the bottom of the radio. And I was hoping to get it out of one sheet, but I can't. It's too wide, so I'm going to have to cut the sheet into strips and lose a bit. Anyway. These have come up very well, the base, the little shelf in the middle and the back, so quite happy with all of those. What I'm going to do now is I will paint them in varnish or something to seal them up so they don't attract any moisture, particularly the MDF that really likes to get wet. I think we're getting pretty close to wrapping this up. There's a few things to do on the chassis and the record player. I've got to connect the two together and see that they actually work together. Plus I've got to let this dry properly and sand it back a little bit, polish it up. And I think we'll be ready to put it all together. While the case is out there drying, I'm going to have a look at this cartridge and its stylus. The performance from this has been pretty ordinary, and in fact mainly you could only hear the static or the noise from the record and not so much of the actual music or the program on there. Now some of the comments I got on the last video suggested that the stereo cartridge was cancelling itself out by the way I connected the mono leads to it. So I've got a couple of ideas from it, and I'll just try those in a minute. First I'm just going to run this as it is now, and this is the way it was wired out in the workshop there, and we'll just hear it and see what it sounds like. Now I've got it connected to the radio here, so we're ready to go. It's playing. I'll turn it up, and that's flat out. That's as far as that goes. So I'm getting a lot of rumble. I'm not getting a lot of the program information through. So I'm going to try something. That's the setup at the moment. I've got two mono wires there. There's the stereo cartridge. There's the left and right stereo input, and the bottom ones are the two ground for those inputs. So what I'm going to do is just take this one off here, off one of the stereo pins. I'll tuck it in here. I'll try that. So all we'll be using is one half of the cartridge. Well, the record's playing. I've got the radio connected up here, and I'll just turn it up.
And the sky
Wow.
just because of love.
Oh, okay. Well, that's improved it 1,000%. I can't leave that running. YouTube will copyright me. So what people were saying was correct. The two sides of the stereo cartridge were in fact cancelling each other out. Now there was another suggestion by a couple of people, so I'm going to try that as well. And that suggestion was to swap the wire on this pin and the bottom ground pin over to change the phase. So I'll do that. And there were people who suggested this, and I didn't know what they were trying to get to, so I apologise if I didn't understand what you were saying, but I do understand it now. Right, record's running again, and I've got the stylus on it now with those two wires crossed over.
But I never did find And
Alright, I've got to turn that off again. Now, I'm not sure if that was any different to when I had one wire off. It may have been a bit fuller, and it may have had a bit more volume too. So, but that's working very, very well. I went to a radio club workshop this morning, and I was talking to my friend and mentor Stuart, and I was telling him about that, and he said, "Oh, you twit, just swap the two wires over." He drew it on the board for me, and suddenly it became obvious what he was saying. So if I didn't understand what you were saying, I apologise, and thanks, Stuart. Good on you. So, very happy now. I've been worried about this for a little while, trying to think how I was going to get around this problem, but that's a great solution. What I have done is, in the meantime, is order a new 78 cartridge. It's a mono with a 78 stylus in it. It runs at 3 volts, and the weight is about 12 to 20 grams, I believe, so that'll be much more suitable for this. I'll take this out and put it aside for a 4533 record player if I need one in the future, so it won't go to waste. This has been about 3 days, so the clear lac is quite hard now. I've just tried sanding it back here a bit, and it seems to be coming out alright. I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm using 600 grit waterproof paper and some water, of course, and I just want to take off that top layer, just the very glossy part of the finish on there. That's come up nice. The next step is just to use an automotive polish to just bring back some of the gloss, and I think that'll be good. Now I'm just going to use some cutting compound to hopefully bring back some of the shine. I don't want it all back, but some of it back. I've only done that area there. That finish is superb, feels terrific, and looks good too, and it's not too glossy. I'm pretty happy with that. Well, that's come out so well. I'm going to do the rest of it, and I'll come back when I've finished. I'm just going to give it a coat of this Carnauba wax. It has brown dye in it, so it helps hide any other imperfections that may be there as well. So I'm going to give it this. This is good stuff. I've given the top a good coat of that. I'm going to do the rest of it. I'll do the brown as well. I'll come back, and about 15 minutes later you just polish it up to a nice deep luster. That's been about 15 minutes. It's actually been longer than that. I had some lunch, so I hope I can get it off again. So I'll just shine this bit up here. Yeah, I might have left that on a bit long. It's gone quite dry. I'll have to keep rubbing at it. When you rub at it, it warms that up, and it comes off eventually. You just got to work a bit harder. But that looks great, so I'll do the rest of this. I've finished polishing that, and I've got a mighty right arm now, but it's come up pretty good, and yeah, it's nice. I'm not sure if it still needs a bit more polishing. It might still have some wax sitting there. So pretty happy with how it's come up. It's probably a little shinier than it needs to be, but gosh, it's not that bad. The new cartridge got delivered this morning, so I'm going to go inside and fit that to the turntable, and we'll see how that goes. Well, here's the new cartridge, and I've fitted it in. I made an adapter. I printed a little adapter out, and it's screwed to the top, and the cartridge clips in there, so there's no mounting for the cartridge. Now, at the other end, I've taken off all the weights. I don't think I need them anymore. I've taken off the little pivot here, and I'm just going to weigh this. Alright, I've zeroed the scale, and I'll just lower the cartridge on there. We're using the screwdriver as a pivot here, and we've got 18 grams. Now the cartridge is rated at 12 to 20, so I'm very happy with that. I'll just leave it exactly as it is there. So I've taken off all that extra weight that was on the arm, Now, one of the comments, and it was backed up yesterday by a friend of mine, he said that if you've got too much weight on this arm, you've got too much mass, and it's got to move it up and down when the record moves up and down. And this platter moves up and down quite severely, so I'll just leave it exactly like that, no weights, and I'll put it all back together. I've got the new cartridge in, and I've just used double-sided tape to stick it in there at the moment. I did have it screwed in, but it's too far back. I need to move it forward, so I've just put it in with some tape. I'll just try it out, and we'll see what it sounds like. So I'll turn it on, turn it up. I can't keep it running. I have to say that doesn't sound as good as the other cartridge. I'll just change records. I put the record I had on yesterday. We'll try this one.
Little boy, yes, it's true, the world's round.
It works alright, but it seems a bit shrill and more static, so I'm obviously getting higher frequency coming through. Now that may be good on modern records, but not on these old 78s. I'm not sure. I think the difference between the two stylus is not enough to warrant going back to the original one. This one's more suitable. It takes a higher tracking weight, so yeah, probably better to stick with this one, I think. Now what I will do is see if that end of track still works. Alright, I'll just move it over, we'll see what happens. Well, beautiful. I've been massaging this record player for the last hour or two. I reprinted a new cartridge holder. I think when it's in 12-inch, this was hitting this stop here instead of letting it come all the way back. So I took the edge off there. I also reshaped this stop here for the 10-inch records. It was rubbing on the records, or some of the records would rub on it. So I just bent it in a bit there and pulled it back a bit by putting joggles in each side. So it's playing all sizes of records I've got now. Now originally for this ground wire I used a bit of desoldering wick, and somebody had a go and said, oh, you know, it's a bit weak, and I agreed with them. I didn't like it when I did it. It was far too weak. So this is a bit of shield off a coax TV cable, a 75 ohm cable. I've just stripped it out and saved the coax shield and used that. So that's quite sturdy, and that'll last forever. Now I had this upside down and I was working on it, and I knocked the mercury switch that was in here and just broke the little glass tip. Now luckily the mercury switch was had the mercury down the bottom, so I was able to reseal that and cut it out. So I fitted a new mercury switch, which I got down the local electronics shop. So that's held in there with a little clip, and I've wired that in, and that works quite well, and a fraction of the size. Now this little rubber drag cap, I tried to make different styles and different types out of different materials. This one works well, and I know it's not going to last forever. Maybe might get 5 years out of it, but it's staying on there at the moment until I find something else. I went to auto shops, I went to everywhere trying to find something. Rubber suppliers, nothing. So that's going to stay there until I find something different. Now when I was testing it, I found this cartridge a bit shrill, so I had a look at this. This is a capacitor that wasn't in the set. It's on the drawing, and there was a wire. This wire was just sitting in a terminal with nothing on it, and I'd never had anything on it. So I reinstated that capacitor, and that's when it became shrill, and I knew that. So I disconnected it again and went back to the way this came out of the factory, and it sounds pretty good now. So I'll leave that disconnected. I've taken that capacitor out. Now before we put this back in the box, I'll give it one more test. The deck is working really well now. I just played a bit more of that record than I normally would. I was cut it into little sections so YouTube wouldn't pick it up, so it should be okay. But once this is in the cabinet, you can't see it playing, so I thought I'd better do it now. Now, one thing I didn't mention was this is a 12-inch record, which I didn't have, a 78, and it's quite mesmerising watching the mechanism work. I sit here for hours doing this. Yeah, it's very clever. Now, you may recall I had a phenolic sheet here just to build this stop up a bit. The cartridge I put in sat on the centre line. The original cartridge with the record player sat slightly offset, so what I've done here when I fitted this cartridge was offset this little 3D printed holder. So now it lines up. I've taken the phenolic sheet away and it's perfect. I think what I'll do is take all this out into the workshop now and I'll start assembling it into the case. I've just been preparing the cabinet to put the radio and the player back in. I've put the front door on. That looks pretty good. Put a little rivet in. I've got a new Astor badge. I haven't put that on. I did put it on and then I took it off again because I thought it might get damaged. So I'll put it on after I finish. The door, I put some felt around the edges. I used flock again, some brown flock I got, and that's on the edge there. That's the same as it was originally. There's my sticker installed, so that looks good. In the back I've put the mounts in for the record player. I cleaned them up. They were very rusty, but they cleaned it very nicely. Alright, let's see if I can get this in. There we go. I think you can see that the bolt that I've got to get the nut on is about 1.25 inches, maybe 1.5 inches down this hole that I've got to try and get the nut on. Now this is the socket I'm going to use. I've rolled up some masking tape and I've got the sticky part on the outside, so I just put it in there and then I'll put the nut on and that'll hold it while I try and tighten it up. This is the point where the door connects to the mechanism on the bottom of the radio, and it's been bent the whole time and I wasn't sure whether that was right or not, so it looks like it should have been straight. So I've straightened it up and there it is there. Okay, so I've got to find a nut for that. I've lost it somewhere. Now I don't quite know what the adjustment would be here. I've got the door shut and that's in its locked and play position. So I've just taken all the slack out of that and I'll do it up there. We'll see how that works. Okay, I'll just try it. That looks pretty good. I'll see how it goes when it's all get back together. I think that'll be okay though. Okay, I'll stick the radio in. So there's a couple of bolts to go in here, hold the radio in. Perfect. Now I'm going to put some washers as well. It didn't have anything when I pulled it apart, but it should have. I've connected everything I can on the top. I need to flip it over and attach the electrical connection to the bottom of the turntable here. I flipped it upside down. I need to remove the old testing leads. Now the wiring's all connected up. This can just sit on the floor, which is what it was doing before, which would be the base that I made for it, and it's probably okay. Now the other option I have is to put a P-clip on it like that and perhaps drill a hole there and hold it down there and it's out of the way of everything. A bit hard to drill at that angle, if I could do it. The other option, I suppose I could put it that way. No, that would clear it too. That would be easier, I'll do that. I've put some tape in here just to minimise the amount of swarf that gets into the machine. Okay, that's good. That's keeping it away from all the moving parts. I'm going to put the bass on. I probably have to take it off to adjust something, but I'll put it on anyway. If you saw my video on the DeWalt radio, you might remember that Ripley, who sent the radio over to me, also included some little feet here, and these are perfect for what I want. Now, the old ones are a mess, so these ones will be terrific. Now flipped it back over, I put the power on, we'll see if it works. Open the door, stick my record in, put it to record, shut the door, turn it up. Well, that worked perfectly, and the sound is amazing. It is really good. Considering the age, I mean, it's not hi-fi quality, but very good. I'll just try this 10-inch one.
Little boy, yes, it's true, the world's round.
Well, that worked perfectly as well. I think I can safely put the back on. Here's the back I did a few days ago, and I've painted it with some varnish to protect it. I'll put the aerial wires through. Alright. I also managed to find some little letters, but they look silly, so I'll have to go online and find some better letters. I've got some period appropriate screws I'll use to secure it. I need to drill the holes out a bit so these will fit through. I should be able to put the two bottom screws in. I repositioned the two top ones here so to pick up some new timber inside, so I'll have to drill them. And there it is, all done. Well, that's come up really nice. Compared to what it was like when I took it out of the boot of my car, the trunk of my car, that looks fantastic. In an earlier video I said I might turn the cloth 90 degrees so the lines went up and down. I also said it in the comments when people were talking about it, but I like it this way. I'm going to leave it this way. The light shimmers off it, and I think it looks pretty good like that, so I'm going to leave it. I've got my new Astor badge sitting there. That looks nice too, so everything's looking really good. I'll take this inside now, connect the aerial, and we'll make sure the radio works. Now, just before I do take it inside, I just remembered I left a shelf out, so I better put that in. Alright, well that should just fit in there. There we go. That's just a little screw there to hold the board in place, I think. I assume that's what it's for. Can't come out because the back holds it, but anyway, there we go. Alright. That looks better. I could see the workings in there, and I thought you shouldn't be able to see that, and then of course I realised I left the shelf out. Okay, I'll take this inside, we'll plug it in and see if it still works. I've got the radio back on the workbench, and I've put an aerial on it, so I'll just flick it over to radio.
You on iHeartRadio, then wake up with Laurel, Gary and Mark, Brisbane's classic hits 4KQ.
It sounds really good.
Say, actually, I just thought of something, or being able to bounce off an idea, or hearing somebody in the desk next to you and go, actually, I've got more information on that. So I guess to that note,
It sounds very good. The car speaker's working very well, probably better than the original. Now, I've been playing some records on this and it works really well. It did have an issue where occasionally it wouldn't start the motor. I ended up adjusting the door mechanism where it picked up on the sliding mechanism on the bottom. I adjusted that slightly and it's working beautifully now. Now this plastic dial here is not as good as it could be. It's sort of faded off or something. If someone's got a really good one, I'd be happy to buy it off them, but this one will do. But if there's a better one around, I'd like to put it in. I'm really happy with this. I was a bit despondent when I first saw it in its condition, but it's come up fantastic. It looks really good. Now I've really enjoyed doing this. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of effort, but a lot of fun. And if you enjoyed this, I hope you can join me for my next radio adventure.